So before we jump in, just be sure to take a look at the first two videos on Articles 8 and 10. I'll link them below because they actually set the stage for what we're talking about in this session. So what we are going to be looking at is actually Article 11 and your rights to peacefully gather and form groups. And then we'll take a look at how Articles 8, 10 and 11 connect and sometimes actually overlap in real life situations. So, Article 11 of the European Convention on Human Rights. It's basically your right to gather peacefully and join up with others. You can think of it as the social life part of the law. But why is it important? Well, it's about your right to hang out with your friends, to join clubs, to march for causes you care about, or to be part of any group that interests you. So let's take a closer look. Article 11 gives everyone the right to get together peacefully and to form or join any group you like, from chess clubs to labour unions. So picture this, you and your friends want to protest for improvements in the canteen food that's available. And Article 11 says you've got the right to do that. Or maybe you want to start a club for fans of obscure films of the 1980s. Well, you can go for it. Article 11's there for you. But we do have a bit of a plot twist because this right isn't set in stone. And more on that in a minute. But first, let's have a look at some real life stories where this right really did make a difference. And we'll start with case study 1, which is platform Heirs to Führer das Leben versus Austria. So this is about a group of doctors called Doctors for Life in Austria, and they put together a peaceful march to share their anti-abortion views. But then counter-protesters showed up and things got pretty tense. The police did try to keep things under control, but the marchers still felt threatened, and they said that their right to gather, wasn't really protected. Now, the European Court of Human Rights had to decide, did Austria do enough to keep these peaceful marchers safe? And the court said yes, as long as the authorities made a reasonable effort to keep things safe. So here's the lesson. You have the right to assemble, but the police can't promise things will be 100% risk-free. They just have to try their best. Let's take a look at another case study. Demir and Bakara versus Turkey. Here, two government workers wanted to start a union and make a collective agreement with their boss. But the authorities said no way. So the workers took their case to the European Court, arguing that Article 11 protected their right to unionise. And the court agreed. Article 11 isn't just about protests. It also covers, remember, workers' rights to join unions and make deals together. So whether you're marching in the streets or forming a book club, well, Article 11's there for you. When can Article 11 be limited? Well, let's say you and your friends want to throw a midnight rave right in the town square. Loud music, glow sticks, the whole shebang. Article 11 covers peaceful gatherings. But what if your party disturbs hospital patients? Or what if it blocks traffic? Well, that's when limits come into play. So restrictions will apply for public safety, so the authorities can step in if there's, risk of violence or harm. Restrictions can apply if there's a public health risk, like during a pandemic. Sometimes gatherings are limited to keep people safe. And also, restrictions apply for the rights of others. So we can't infringe on others' freedoms. Your protest can't stomp all over someone else's rights. So here's the key. Any limits have to be fair, based on actual laws and truly needed in a democratic society. There can be no because we feel like it rules. Here's another case study. So this is Redfern versus UK. And let's take a look at Mr. Redfern here. He was a bus driver in the UK and he got fired for joining a very controversial political party. The party was the BNP, the British National Party. And he said Article 11 protected his freedom to join any group, even if lots of people disagreed with his views. And actually, the court sided with Redfern. Employers can't just fire someone for their political associations unless there's a really strong reason, like safety. So what's the takeaway from this? Well, Article 11 protects unpopular views too, but there are limits if things start to look dangerous. Let's take a look at some limits now. So this is how restrictions work. We've seen these restrictions before. So we've got these 3 strict rules. First of all, you can only restrict someone's freedoms in this way if it's prescribed by law. So any restriction must be based on actual law, not just decisions made on a whim, by local officials, for example. There must be a legitimate aim as well. So there needs to be a good reason for the limit. Public safety, health, or protecting the rights of other people. And finally, the restriction should just be enough. Okay, so necessary, so no more. It's a bit like grabbing an umbrella when it rains and, not building like a big fortress to protect you from the rain. So court checks these 3 steps to decide if a restriction is fair, and if any step doesn't fit, well, the restriction shouldn't be allowed. So how does this work with the other rights that we've looked at, the other articles? So we'll take a look at how we can link now Articles 8, 10 and 11. So you can think of it as a juggling act, if you like. You've got privacy, Article 8, free speech, Article 10, and gathering with others, Article 11. And sometimes these rights they tend to overlap, they might even bump into each other. So Article 8, that protects your personal life and freedoms and relationships, You've got freedom of expression, which lets you say what you think. And you've got assembly and association, which lets you get together and form groups. I mean, they can sometimes be a bit of an issue, can't it? So let's take this little example. So if there was a protest, that would be protected under Article 11. If it was loud, that could be under Article 10. But if it's happening right outside your home, well, that comes under Article 8. Well, then the courts are going to have to balance everyone's rights. It's a bit like baking a cake, isn't it? Too much of one thing and it's a bit of a mess. So, there's the analogy there. So here's the quick fire case reminders that we've covered in these videos. You've got Pretty versus UK. So a woman wanted the right to assisted suicide, but the court said Article 8, privacy, matters. But it's not unlimited, and sometimes public interest comes first. And you've got Marx versus Belgium. Unmarried mothers were treated differently, and the court said that broke Article 8, privacy and family life count. Handyside versus UK. There was a publisher who wanted to sell a controversial book, and the court decided freedom of expression, Article 10. Well, that covers even ideas that shock or offend. And finally, we've got Lingens versus Austria, where a journalist was convicted for criticising a politician. The court protected his Article 10 rights. Public debate is important, after all, in a democracy. So let's take a look now and wrap things up. Article 11 is your legal all-access pass to gather, to protest and to join groups. But there are some, I think we'd all agree, reasonable limits. Courts look at the law, the reason, and whether it's really needed before saying no. So Articles 8, 10 and 11, they often team up to make sure everyone's rights are balanced fairly.